Welcome to the world of chess tactics. Our next step is to build you an arsenal of tactical weapons with which you can take on the savviest of opponents. During this part of the academy, you'll learn how to use your pieces in coordinated attack. We'll focus on the most fundamental tactical devices: forks, skewers, pins, removing the defender, and discovered attacks. Each theme we explore will at once make sense right away and possess countless layers of subtlety which you can unearth as you learn more and more about chess. It's important to realize that these very weapons are used by the world's greatest chess players in every game they play. Now you're speaking the language of the masters. The first component of our arsenal is called forks. We saw this weapon briefly in part 1. The fork is the most basic weapon in chess, and it's used at every level of play. You can envision it as a fork in the road, a branching of possibilities. Whenever one piece attacks two other pieces, it's a fork. As this course progresses, we'll see numerous examples of double attacks. The fork is the most basic and essential manifestation. In general, the more valuable the other two pieces, the more powerful the fork. In this position, the white knight forks the black king and queen. This is a royal fork, and the strongest of all possibilities. In general, the more valuable the other two pieces, the more powerful the fork. In this section, we're going to focus on knight forks, because this is the hardest piece to get used to. But first, let's look at some basic forks, where other pieces do the damage. In this position, white is in check, but can turn the tables on black. What is white's best move? That's right, king e4 forks the black knight and rook, and they cannot defend each other. You see, the king can be a weapon too. In fact, towards the end of the game, we often use the king actively like this. In the beginning of a chess game, we want to defend our king, keep him safe, but when the board empties and there is less danger, he becomes a powerful piece that should be used actively. Do you see any forks for white here? You got it. Here, c4 forks the knight and rook. It's black to move here. Do you see any forks? Well done. Bishop e3 check wins the white rook. Do you see any forks for black here? Very good. Rook h5 forks the bishop and knight. This example shows how powerful a rook can be on an open board, forking pieces on opposite sides. Here, white can win the black rook with a queen fork, but there are two right ways and two wrong ways. Be careful. What's white's best move? Very good. One of the two right moves is queen d5 check, winning the rook. The queen is a very powerful attacker and can be devastating with long-range forks. Do you see the other one? That's right. One of the two right moves is queen a2 check, winning the rook. The queen is a very powerful attacker and can be devastating with long-range forks. The other fork which would win the rook is queen d5 check. This next position is similar to the last one, but with a wrinkle. Here black has one way to win the white rook, but there are three tempting but wrong tries. Take your time with this one. Find the best move. Very good. The solution is queen a7 check, operating on a long diagonal and a long file to win the rook. Now let's spend some time examining knight forks, a weapon you'll want to have at your fingertips. How can white win a piece here? Very good. Knight c3 check, forking the king and bishop. In this exercise, click on every square where the white knight can fork two black pieces. Well done. Now click on every square where a white knight could fork two black pieces without getting captured. Very good. In the middle game and opening, knight forks often take place on the f7 square, like in this position. Here the white knight forks the black queen and rook. One way this type of fork can arise is in an opening that I used to play when I was a kid, called the fried liver. From the beginning, I play e4, my opponents would play e5. You usually want to develop a pawn into the center of the board in the beginning. Then you want to develop a central knight. I played knight f3, attacking his e-pawn. My opponents would play knight c6, defending. Then I'd play bishop c4. Notice how I'm developing my pieces into the center of the board, and I'm preparing my king to castle, into safety. My opponents would play knight f6, and now I would play the move knight g5. A lot of the time they'd play a move like d6 here. Now, what's white's best move? Good job. Here you can play the fork that I showed you above. Knight takes f7, forks the queen, and rook. You see the bishop on c4 defends the knight, so the black king can't capture it. After knight takes f7, black should move the more valuable piece out of the attack, with queen e7, and white plays knight takes h8, and has won a rook. I can't tell you how many games I won with this trap as a 6 and 7-year-old boy, But I didn't show you this opening for you to memorize it and try to start winning chess games fast. Memorizing opening traps is the wrong way to study chess, because then we're not learning the heart of the game. The reason I showed you this opening is because I want you to see how patterns we work on with just a few pieces on the board can be repeated in much more complicated situations. So as this course goes along, just try to get a feeling for the essence of each tactical and strategical device I show you. These are the principles of chess, and they can be applied to any situation. The key is to learn the basics in a more simplified atmosphere, so we can focus on what's essential. What should white play here? Find the best move. Well done. Knight c5 check. Well, here we see the white has two forks, knight c5 check and knight d4 check. We know that a rook is worth 5 pawns and a bishop is only worth 3 pawns, so let's win the rook. In chess, you'll often see a good move, then maybe a slightly better move. But take your time. Find the best move. What is white's best fork here? Very good. White's best move is knight e5 check, winning a pawn. Again, we see two possibilities, knight c5 and knight e5. This question is a little tricky because I don't want you to automatically fork the strongest piece at all times. Here knight c5 check would be a mistake because the forked knight can simply capture the forker. Knight takes c5. Remember, anytime a knight attacks another knight, the attack is mutual. It's important as I teach you attacking themes for you to consider the other side of the coin. We need to develop our arsenal while consistently learning how to disarm the opponent. This position is a little different from the ones we've seen so far. Here white is forking black's rook and bishop. Do you see any way for black to avoid losing material? That's right. Black can defend with rook a6. So after knight takes d6, he can recapture rook takes d6. And we know that bishops and knights are both worth approximately 3 pawns, so no material was lost or won. Whenever you fork, you want to find the most forcing alternative, so your opponent cannot defend. For example, take a look at the next position. Here white has 2 possible forks. What's the best move? Well done. Clearly knight b3 check is most forcing, and wins a rook outright. But what happens after the mistake, knight c6? White is forking the 2 black rooks. What should black play here? Well, there are a few ways to avoid losing a whole rook. First of all, either rook could move to a8 or d5 and defend the other one, so black would only lose the exchange, knight for rook, the equivalent of about 2 pawns. In chess, we call the trade-off of rook for bishop or rook for knight the exchange, so if you win a rook for a bishop, you've won the exchange. If you lose, for example, a rook for a knight, you've lost the exchange. But black has a better move after knight c6. Look for the most forcing escape. Good work. Rook h8 check. Get out of attack with tempo. You see, if the rook is checking the king, white is forced to move out of the way. This type of forcing response is an in-between move, is called with tempo. White has to move the king, after which black can move the a5 rook and have gotten out of danger completely. So on both attack and defense, you want to minimize your opponent's chances by finding the most forcing alternative. Okay, this problem might be a little tough because it uses a combination to set up a fork. You haven't yet learned the main idea that the combination is based on. It's coming up next, so don't worry if you have trouble. But try to solve it. It's good to stretch the mind. Here white can set up a powerful fork. Take your time and see if you find the combination. Click next when you see the move. The correct move is rook e8 check, sacrificing the rook to set up a fork. A sacrifice, sometimes called a sack by chess players, is when you give up material to gain down the road. You see, if the black king moves out of check, the rook can capture the queen. This is called a skewer and looks like an X-ray attack on the queen. You've already seen this. Black's only choice is king takes e8, and now I'm sure you see the fork. Knight c7 check wins the queen. After you finish this course, you'll have no problem spotting combinations like these. But first we have to internalize the building blocks. Now let's learn about pins and skewers.